All right, let's go ahead and get started with the last chapter for Unit 6 under Rentals, Condominiums, and Cooperatives. Our objectives, we will compute the cost of purchasing a cooperative or a condominium. Number 2, I will understand the advantages and disadvantages of different forms of homes. Here's the vocabulary for this unit. Make sure that you've reviewed this and read through the reading for this particular chapter before starting the video. So looking at the first example, it says last year Bert paid his monthly condominium maintenance fee of $912. Of that, 15% was for taxes. How much did Bert pay last year? So I'm looking for the yearly taxes on his condo. Well, I know that he paid $912 each month, and I know that 15% of that was taxes. And anything is something of something, you're looking at multiplication. So we know that 1 month's worth of taxes is $136.80. But it wants to know a year. There are 12 months in a year. So we're going to need to multiply that $136.80 times 12 to get the yearly amount. And we find that he pays $1,641.60 per year. All right, go ahead and press pause, solve the check your understanding, come back when you're ready. All right, Maggie's monthly maintenance fee was M dollars. 27% of those M dollars went to taxes. Express the annual property tax deduction algebraically. So the question reads just the same as the question we just did. So 27% as a decimal is 0.27 times whatever that monthly value is, or monthly payment is, and then we multiply that by 12 to get the 1 month to a year. If we go ahead and distribute that through, we end up with 3.24 times M. Either one of these answers algebraically are correct. Okay, Seaford Cove is owned by its shareholders. The co-op has a total of 50,000 shares. Janet has an apartment and she owns 550 of those. What percentage does Janet own? So what portion or proportion does she own? Well, again, remember, we're taking the part and dividing it by the whole. We've seen this multiple times now. We've got 550 shares is what Janet owns out of the 50,000 shares. So when we multiply that out, we end up with 0.011. Next, we've got to go ahead and multiply by 100 or move that decimal point over 2 times. And I end up with 1.1%. Okay, go ahead and press pause, solve this, come back to me when you're ready. Okay, it says Glen Oaks Village Co-op is represented by S shares. So this is the total or the whole. Sage owns R shares, so it's the part. And then we've got to get it to a percent. So part over whole multiplied by 100, and that gives me my algebraic expression. Okay, example number 3. Gary Larson's new job is relocating to a new city. He knows he'll be there for at least 10 years. Gary is uncertain as to whether he should rent an apartment or buy a home for the time he will be working there. He knows that eventually he wants to return to his home city. Gary wants to compare the accumulated mortgage costs versus the accumulated rental costs before making a decision. He knows he can afford a monthly rent of $2,500. If he buys, he can afford $100,000 down, and he can get a $350,000 mortgage for 20 years at an APR of 6%. So we're not necessarily going to create a spreadsheet, but we are going to compare the rental versus purchasing. So in the rental situation, we know that he said he can afford $2,500 per month, and we know that he he's going to be there for 10 years, and that at that 10 years, there's 12 months in a year. So he is going to make 120 payments over the life of the time being there. So the total that he will pay if he rents an apartment will be $300,000. Now, if we look at the purchase, he's looking at $100,000 down. But first thing we've got to do with what's left is we have to find what the monthly payment would be. So the principal, again, would be the $350,000. The rate would be 0.06, and the time would be 20 years because the loan is for 20 years. And when we plug that into our calculator, hopefully we did it all correct. We've got a total of a monthly payment of $2507.51. So now if we take the $2507.51 and we multiply it by the same 120 payments for the 10 years that he's going to be there, we're looking at a total of about $300,901.20. But we do have to remember that he also put $100,000 down. So in this period, he's looking at paying $400,901.20, which is clearly $100,000 more than with the rental. So if we just went based on this, then we look at it and we say, well, of course we're going to rent, but let's hold up a second and let's see if that's necessarily the best thing to do. Now, when you rent an apartment, when you move out, do they give you some of that back? And the answer is no. You may get the security deposit back, but whatever your monthly rent was, they don't give you a portion of that back. They charge that to you. You're never going to see that money again. So all $300,000 of this is gone. But when we look at the purchase, we looked at this purchase total, he paid about $450,000 for this home, or at least that's between the down payment and the principal. But after 10 years, we see that he actually paid $400,901.20. But if we were to sell this place, is he going to get anything back? Well, let's assume that he sells it for the same $450,000 that he paid before. Well, in this case, if we sell for $450,000, he had put $400,901 in, so he's still looking at about $49,099 that he can get back when he sells that home. And that's a bare minimum. So we're looking at that now. Well, all of a sudden, 300 versus 350. And again, that's assuming that it does not go up in value. And many times it does go up in value. So he's going to get a good portion of that back. The other thing, let's go ahead and talk about the next question, which is talking about, let's do some comparison. Now, if we look at it, renting, well, we should ask ourselves some questions. Is he married or is he single? Does that play in the type of choice that you would make in where you're going to live? Does he want privacy? Or does he really enjoy the city life? Is he okay with having things like lawn maintenance and upkeep? Is he okay that he's going to have to pay for the repairs in the home versus in the rental, he doesn't have to pay for them? Rental insurance versus regular insurance. Utilities. Sometimes in rentals, some of the utilities are covered. These are just a few of the costs that Gary might want to consider when he's making this decision for him or him and his family, whatever the case may be. All right, example 4. Jake and Gloria moved into an apartment paying $1,900 a month, The landlord told them that the rent has increased on average of 4.1% per year. Express the rent, Y, as an exponential function over the number of years they rent the apartment. And then determine the amount of rent it'll be to renew for their lease in year 14. Well, the first thing we have to do here is look at our exponential growth formula. And that is Y equals A times 1 plus R to the n power, where A is the initial amount, R is the percent increase, and N is the growth period. And actually, when we write this, I'm going to rewrite it again with terms of X. It's Y equals A times 1 plus R all to the X minus 1, with X being my time in years. Well, the initial amount, Y is what we're looking for. The initial rent amount was $1,900, and this here represents the yearly growth. So 1 represents 100%, which is what the rent was. The 0.041 represents the growth, which was 4.1%. X, so far, they have been there 13 years, and how do I know that? Because they're about to start their 14th year. So it's going to be a 13 minus 1. When we rewrite this equation, it's 1900 times 1 plus 0.041 all to the 12th power. When I plug all of those in, I'll get my final answer of what the rent would renew at, and it would be $3,077.20. Okay, go ahead, press pause, complete this you do, come back when you're ready. Okay, it says in example 4, suppose that the rent goes up $60 per year. So what we're saying here is, remember, we had two different types of regression that we can look at, or appreciation that we can look at. We've got a linear one and we've got an exponential one. An exponential one increases by the same percent each year, whereas a linear one goes up by the same value each year. So when we look at this, we've got $60 each year, so we're looking at the same value. When I draw my slope and I see that it's going to be going up by the same amount every single year, creating a line. And whenever we're creating a line like that, we're looking at our age-old formula of Y equals mx plus b, or my slope-intercept form. The slope is the change. The b is my starting point. So if I look at this, I'm looking at an equation of Y equals the change. Well, the change is going to be $60 each year, starting at the $1,900 in rent that they started out on year 1. And that does it for this video. We're going to go ahead and complete the last two in the next video. Good job, everyone.